Daniel 12, verse 1. And as always, write all your questions on the chat, and I'll get to them as soon as we're done with the chapter. And since it is very short, I guess it'll be soon. Just a second to get the Hebrew version of this chapter. Here we go. Alright, so beginning with the verse 1 of Daniel 12, which is a chapter that I mention a lot in a lot of our studies. And it says, at that time, meaning the end times, and for that we could go back to Daniel 11, the end of it, what we read last week, which actually is very interesting, and this shows how the prophecy of the king of the north and the king of the south had to do with the very end times. And like I said, there was a fulfillment of it during the time of the Maccabees, but Yahushua, when he manifested, he said that it was going to be fulfilled again, not directly saying the time of the Maccabees or those things, but the abomination of desolation, which is what they called the sacrifice that the emperor of Greece made in the temple of Yahweh. So all of the story of the Greek Empire is found in the chapter 11 that we saw last week. But like I mentioned many times last week, there's a clear connection between what is said in that chapter with what is said in Daniel 9, which has to do with the very end times, and that is what is said right there on the chapter. So now, when we have that in mind, we can read, as we did, Daniel 11, and see how it correlates with Daniel 9 and therefore with the end times. How everything that happened with the Greek Empire was a shadow of what would happen at the end times with the last empire, the New World Order and the beast and the abomination of desolation, which will be the image of the beast mentioned in Revelation 13. So in the verse 45, which is the last of Daniel 11, it said, and he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the exalted set apart mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. So this was a verse mentioning how the beast would be destroyed at the end. And in Revelation we see how the fifth plague is when this will happen. The kingdom of the beast will be darkened. So that would happen at the fifth plague, last plague, which is pretty much during the last year of the last seven, the last week of Daniel, mentioned in Daniel 9, which, like I said, had a connection with Daniel 11. So this is the reason why they chose this as the end of chapter 11, because it has a close right there with the fact of that the beast will fall. But then chapter 12 starts with saying that during that time, meaning the end times, when all of it would be fulfilled, the coming of the beast and the coming of the abomination of desolation and all of that, this would happen. So that's why it says, at that time Michael shall stand up. This is very important. And there are some who have the interpretation that Yahushua HaMashiach was Michael, who came in the flesh. However, for several reasons, many reasons I have mentioned many times, I believe Michael to be the voice. That's why he's called, well, for many reasons, like I said, the voice of the shofar that harvests the chosen few during the transformation mentioned by Paul in Thessalonians and Corinthians. and obviously also by Yahuchanan in the book of Revelation. So there are many reasons why Mikael has to do or is connected with the second coming, the last. Mikael being the messenger, the envoy of Yahushua, mentioned in Revelation 22, when Yahushua says, I will send my messenger and he will testify of these things. He will testify of Messiah. So the last is Yahushua's messenger, just like the first, Yahushua, was and is Yahweh's messenger. So Yahweh sent Yahushua the first, and now Yahushua sends Mikael as the messenger, the second manifestation of the Almighty on earth. And that is why in this chapter we see that it is talking about the end. At that time, meaning the end times. Not only when we connected with the previous chapter and because of what we said there, but just because of always in the books of the prophets, the term at that time refers to the end times. So there are many reasons, and as we are going to see, it is obviously about the end times, this whole chapter. So there is no reason to go against the fact that it is talking about the end times. But like I said, chapter 11 has to do with the Greek Empire, and the chapters and verses were added later. So this was read all together. So some have taken it and in a way can be connected with the way everything happened with the Greek Empire, and then how Yahweh appeared on earth through Mashiach. And that's when everything started again, and that's why he's called the last Adam. And that's why everything that happened with the Greek Empire right before Mashiach appeared had to happen again at the end times. And at that time, as we see in Daniel 12, at that time Mikael shall stand up. Mikael is one of the two Malachim that are mentioned in the common scriptures or Bibles that most people have. There are some scriptures that add other books, and in those other books that they add, we find other angels like Raphael. And in the book of Hanok or Enoch, we find other four Malachim. So Gabriel, Raphael, and Mikael are the most common and known. But in Hanok, 7 appeared as the 7 Malachim of Yahweh that stand before him. So Mikael is the one that is in charge of the... Actually, I think this would be important to mention it. In the book of Hanok, go find it. Just a second. Here we go. Well, I have it right here in English, so I will just translate. So let me find the verse I was mentioning. Here we go. Chapter 20, verse 1. I was thinking about the fact that I always use the English version to translate to Spanish. So I was all messed up in the head with the English study and having to actually read the English version. So don't mind me. Anyways, chapter 20, verse 1, it says, and these are the names of the set apart angels who keep watch. Uriel, which means my light is Elohim, or the mighty one, or others translated or can be translated as the light of Elohim. One of the set apart angels, namely the set apart angel of the spirits of men. Then it says Raguel, which is the one of the, it means the thunder of Elohim, the or lightning. One of the set apart angels who takes vengeance on the world and on the lights, meaning the fallen angels. Michael, one of the set apart angels, namely the one put in charge of the best part of humankind, in charge of the nation. So Michael, one of the set apart angels, namely the one put in charge of the best part of humankind, in charge of the nation. So even according to the book of Hanok, and as we are going to see in Daniel, because I just haven't read it, this is true. Michael is the one put in charge of Israel, the chosen people, and meaning obviously the true Israelites. And therefore, as we know through Yahushua, those who follow Yahushua HaMashiach, since as Galatians and Colossians says, in Yahushua there is no Yahudi nor Greek, but that is in Yahushua. So those who are in Yahushua are, what it says here, the best part of humankind, in charge of the nation. So the best part of humankind, those who have chosen the truth, Yahushua HaMashiach, as sovereign, as Kohen Hagadol, and Yahweh puts Michael, the Sar, or prince, over the nation, and that's why he has to appear on earth in the end times to defend that nation, even as a man, being one of the two witnesses. And when he is killed, like his sovereign, his savior, Yahushua HaMashiach, then he receives authority to kick Satan out of heaven, and that is what we see in Revelation 12. That is why first the virgin, which is the earth, the earth gave birth when she was a virgin to Adam. Now the earth is having birth pains, and that is the end times. And when it comes to people, is going to give birth to the chosen few. But the congregation of the chosen few, which is the virgin now, is going to give birth to the last, which is Michael, who comes as one of the chosen, being the prince who will become the king of kings once he dies, as Mashiach did, being Kohen Gadol, now his messenger. And as we always mention, the messenger represents he who sent him in everything. That's why Yahushua said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. So that's why first and last, through Yahushua HaMashiach, the first, and the last being his messenger Michael, who, as we see in Revelation and Daniel and many other parts, is the one sent to defend the nation, just like David. So Michael is the one who will fulfill what David left as a shadow through his life, and then also Moshe and Yaakov and many others in scriptures. So Michael, one of the set apart angels, namely the one put in charge of the best part of humankind, in charge of the nation. Then he says Sarakael, one of the set apart angels, who is in charge of the spirits of men, who cause the spirits to sin, who is in charge of the spirits of men who cause the spirits to sin, meaning to punish those who become a stumble block for others, pretty much. Gabriel, one of the set apart angels, who is in charge of the serpents, meaning the seraphim, certain type of angels who had a shape of serpents of fire. In the garden, in the cherubim, or the certain type of angels also that have 4 different faces and cover, just like they cover the throne. So Gabriel, or Gabriel, is the angel that appears the most in scriptures and is the one who announced the birth of Mashiach. That is why some people take it as Gabriel announced and Michael was the one who entered Miriam's womb. But like I have said, Yahushua, and obviously because scripture says it, Yahushua is the word and the last is the voice. So they are two separate parts that, when one speaks, come together. But before one speaks, there is no voice, even though the word may be in your mind or written, like Yahushua being the word, but now the voice, which is Michael, the envoy, the one who will call on the chosen, will call the chosen few, being that the sheepfold of Yahushua, to come together and go to the Father through the way that Yahushua made, being he himself the way and the door, as he said it. So, going back to Daniel 12. So now we know that Michael is the one, according to the book of Hanok, the one that is put in charge of the chosen few. So that is the Malach of the chosen few, the Malach of Philadelphia, pretty much the congregation mentioned in Revelation 3, and is the one that fights for that congregation, for those people, that nation. So also that is important because, as I have mentioned many times before, in the second heaven, since Yahweh is in the third heaven, or pretty much he is the third heaven that in which everything exists, the second heaven, which is pretty much when he created space itself for matter to exist, and then creation got formed, Yahweh made in the second heaven several angels, and through different things that happen in him showing justice and revealing himself through the word Yahushua, the light, and then through the voice Michael, the fire, he revealed to those malachim at a certain point in time and gave a different position to each malach, and that's when pretty much Hillel, or Lucifer, got his power or authority over the rest of the angels, and then rebelled once Adam and Eve were on the garden, and he came down to offer the fruit, so the fruit of knowledge. And that's a huge story right there, but I'm just trying to point something out, and is the fact that Hillel received the authority in the second heaven over all the angels. And we are seeing that Yahweh has 7 angels, like I said earlier, and it's in Revelation, and they manifested to pretty much condemned Samael, the first Malach that fell, and when he fell, the authority was given to Hillel. So Yahweh pretty much subjected Michael as a Malach in the second heaven to the one that he has or had given authority to, which was Hillel. Just like we see in scriptures that it happened with Shaul, the first king of Israel, and Hillel, Shaul being a representation of Hillel, Lucifer, and then David, who was a shepherd, who was he's presented as a youth pretty much, who didn't deal with politics and nor with the protocol that they used for even fighting when he goes to fight Goliath, and he just goes as it is, the way he came in, the way he would pasture his sheep. So it is very interesting to see the story that we are given of David, and see how David represents Mashiach, both first and last, but because of the fact that he came as king and he shed blood and other reasons, he represents the second coming, the branch of David. So the last, meaning Michael. That's why I said that Michael would manifest to fulfill what was shadowed by David and others. So the fact that David was under the king of that time, Shaul, and he respected his authority and everything, but even so, Shaul, because of a spirit that entered him, wanted to just kill David because of the envy that he had for him, for many reasons. So Shaul wanted to kill David, and that is like what happened pretty much in the heavens, between Hillel as Shaul and Michael as David. So that's why when Michael manifests on earth, Hillel will make sure to kill him, and then Yahushua, because of the last believe in Mashiach, will be resurrected and therefore receive the authority to take Hillel out and become the throne, just like David took over the kingdom after Shaul died. And Shaul died because Yahweh decided pretty much, and then he tried to commit suicide but couldn't do it right. So the story with Shaul and David is like Hillel and Michael. So that is very important. And like the reason why I started with all of this is because what we just read in Hanok, Michael was the one in charge of the chosen few, the nation. Pretty much before Mashiach was just those of the flesh of Israel. That was it. But there was an angel over all the angels. All the angels, or of all the angels, there were 70. And they were above all the nations. So each nation had an angel above them. So those are 70. And then Yahweh chose Abraham and his seed, and from it came Jacob, and he made one nation. That was Michael over that nation. So that's 71. And then Hillel was over all of those nations, being the one that was supposed to bring the account of everything to Yahweh. But then he decided to keep everything to himself and act like if he was the one to whom everything and everybody had to give account to. So when we see that just a second, I want to say something else about that point just before we start. Yeah, the 70 angels over the nations, then Michael over the nation of Israel, as we just saw, and Hillel was above those 71, so that made 72. That's why there's a lot spoken about a name of, well, about that, not a lot, but a name of 42 letters and one name of 72 letters. Then also we see of the 72 demons of Goesha, and 72 names of Elohim taken from 3 verses of Exodus. And when we separate each letter of each verse, we end up with 72 names for Elohim. So that number 72 has to do with that pretty much. 72 in the simple numbers that we see in Hebrew would be ayin, the I, which is 70, and 2, the bet, which is 2. So 72 could be represented by the ayin and the bet. So it would be like the I over the house. That's why there was that angel over the creation, and now he is worshipped as the all-seeing eye, Hillel, I mean. So I hope that huge introduction didn't get you bored, and I hope it was everything understood. If not, just leave your question and I'll continue. So it says, at that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. So this is a confirmation from what we just read in the book of Hanok. In Hebrew, it says And at that time, he will stand Mikael. Also, the name Mikael means who is like him, or well, who is like Elohim, who is like the Almighty. It is actually a question, and is the question that he made when Hillel said that he was gonna become like the Almighty, and he would sit at his right hand, and all of that he said in Isaiah 14. So when Hillel said that he would be like Elohim, Mikael stood up, and that's why he got the hate from Hillel. That's why everything that I just explained about Shaul hating David. Now, when Hillel said that, Mikael stood up and said, Mikael. That's why he got that name and became the representation of Elohim. So the same question is the answer, because Mikael means who is like Elohim. So that's the answer and the war cry that Mikael made when he heard that Hillel wanted to be like Elohim. So he asked Mikael, pretty much a rhetoric question, saying nobody is like Yahweh. Hillel was crazy to think that he was even, that it was even possible, because there's no way that a creation as a malach, in this case Hillel, because Mikael actually, as the voice of Yahweh, pretty much had a different source. But like I said, he was subjected, just like David for a time was under Shaul, even though spiritually he was king of Shaul. I hope that's understood. So pretty much just like Yahushua came to this earth, the voice Mikael entered the second heaven and was subjected to the rules of that heaven. I hope that's understood also. So Mikael said that question when Hillel decided to rebel. Just like when Hillel said, well, the serpent said to Eve, to Hava, eat of the tree, because if you eat of it, you will be like Elohim. So once again, when the serpent goes to Hava and tells her that she will be like Elohim, the Malach says Mikael. So he receives that name, and that means that he gives testimony through his name, because each name has to do with the mission that the Malach has. And so much so that, at least in Judaism, it is said that they don't have actually names like we do. They have titles, and each title has to do with the manifestation, with the mission that they have to do when they manifest. So they receive other names depending on the mission that they have. So that's why also it is said that Mikael is also called Metatron. However, in Jewish writings, it is written that there are two Metatrons. And I say Jewish, and I could say also, well, Yahudim. And what I mean by that is that most of the things are tradition of those who rejected Mashiach. So that's when I say Jewish. But some of those writings do have some positive information that comes directly, obviously, from Israel. So in those writings, we see that Metatron is Mikael, but then we also see, well, that is in the revelation of Zorobabel, that it says that Mikael, he who is Metatron. But then there's another writings that I would say are in a not as revealed perhaps, but it's more of tradition, opinion, and taken from other writings of all, that it says that there are two Metatron. And because of what they believe and what some say regarding Metatron, it is possible that that name was given to Hillel because of the fact that he was the one representing the Almighty. And like I said, and as it is written in Haggai 2, Yahweh will destroy the throne of the nations, meaning the angel over whom the presence of Yahweh is placed to control this world, the nations, 70, like I said. So that Malach is the throne, and Metatron has to do with throne. So it means that that Metatron would be destroyed in order to bring the other Metatron, which would be Michael, whose war is to take the lie that Satan told Chava, show that only he himself, well, that he is one, yet he manifested as Yahushua HaMashiach. And like I have said, Yahushua is the way. So Yahushua is the me, as in who is like Yahweh. That's why Yahushua said to Philip, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. So when Michael said that, Michael, he was saying Yahushua, his son, is like the Father. Yahushua is like Yahweh, not Hillel. Because that is why Yahushua is sitting at the right hand of the Father. That is where Hillel wanted to place his throne. So the question of Michael has different levels, and the last level is the fact that Yahweh ultimately gives to Michael the gift of becoming the second coming, and therefore receiving his image, his semblance. That's why also David said that he would be satisfied once he would be resurrected, being his image, in his image and likeness. So that means that Michael, through dying, will become one with Yahushua and will receive that blessing, and therefore his name also can be taken as a statement, because he will become the face, the voice, whom people will see when they want to come to the Almighty being on earth, because Yahushua at the right hand of the Father would be accessed, if we could use that word, pretty much only by the chosen few. That's why Yahushua said, the world will not see me again, yet you will see me, the chosen few, the disciples, who represented the 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe. So Yahushua said that he's only going to be seen by the chosen few, 144,000, the disciples, the prophets. But the rest of humanity, who actually rejected him but accepted him with combined with a lie, pretty much, which is what happens in most of the world and doctrines, but they loved their neighbor as themselves, and all of that we have spoken. They are justified if they believe in the death and resurrection of Messiah. So they will be resurrected as the people, and they will have to face or see the last Michael as he became man. And that is why I have said that just like there is the set apart temple, or set apart place in the temple, and then the most set apart place, and it was separated by a veil, which was each veil of the temple, like I have said, represents each Satan. But in this case, the fact that the people that are in the set apart place would see one face of the veil, and the Kohen Hagadol, which was fulfilled by Mashiach, would see the other face of the veil, is pretty much to show how the chosen few, who are Yahushua's body, will be able to see the inside of the temple, meaning heaven, while the many who will be justified will only be able to enter the set apart place, meaning this creation perfected, and will have to see the face of the last. Those who enter will see the other face, the first, the same person, two faces. Hope that's understood. Just like it was believed by the Jewish people that that Adam and Eve were like that, one face to the front, one face to the back, when they were created. Yet it is written that Yahweh took Eve from his side. So then they have a bunch of other opinions, because they say, well, if it was on the back, why did it take it from the side? But I have explained that in certain studies, and at a certain point we'll do it again. So it's amazing the introduction that I have made, and I haven't even read one verse. So once again, I hope you're still with me. So at that time, Mikael shall stand up. There was a lot of explanation just to show or prove a point, and that is that Mikael will have to come to earth in the end times, and that means one of the two witnesses. That is something that I haven't heard much or none, not one time, just in case. Um, but what I have read is regarding Mikael being Yahushua, but there's reasons which I haven't mentioned and I won't right now because I already spoke a lot, um, to show that Yahushua is the word and Mikael is the voice, and that means one of the two witnesses who was represented by Moshe and David. So that's why it says at that time Mikael shall stand up. Most people read this verse and just go through it and they just imagine Mikael in the heavens and that's it, standing up to say we're gonna fix this or something like that, because the stand up mentioned there in Hebrew has to do with standing up in judgment, which is interesting because as the two witnesses, the actual name witness is a name given to somebody in a court when judgment is being brought upon someone. So they bring the witnesses to say who did it. So like I said also, Mikael, who was the one who said who is like Elohim when Hillel said, is pretty much the one to confess or testify in the negative sense that Hillel rebelled in the heavens, and obviously when becomes a man, the fact that Yahushua was able to defeat Satan and all his malachim when he died on the cross. So that's why Mikael comes as a witness and has to stand up to testify. And standing up in scriptures also is a term that is used regarding someone entering the word of the living. So just like when one goes to rest, lays on, well, just lays down, and dreaming or sleeping is the same as dying, spiritually speaking. So is standing up to act, not only in a spiritual way, but literally entering this reality and standing up as one of humanity, as a human. That's why Yahweh prophesied that he would manifest as a Gibor. Gibor is a term used for when the angels entered this reality as men, normally used for men who did a lot of evil, like the Nephilim, those who were hybrids. In this case, Mikael would not come as a hybrid or as a Nephilim, like that term, but yes as a Gibor, because of the fact that he is a Malach who entered this reality as a human through a regular relation of men and women. So just like a soul enters a womb to get a body, pretty much the soul that would enter would be that of the Malach, Mikael. Hope that's understood. So standing up has to do with entering this reality as a person. Second has to do with standing up to testify in court, because he comes as one of the two witnesses. And his own name shows his testimony, who is like Elohim. Mi-ka-el. Who? Me. Ka as El, mighty one, Elohim. So his own name testifies that Yahushua is like Elohim, because Yahushua is represented by the Mi, and the last, like I have said, is represented by the Ma in Hebrew, which is what. So at that time Mikael shall stand up, the great prince, who stands watch over the sons of your people. Just like when David was able to kill more people than Shaul, and they made songs of him and they praised him, and Shaul got all jealous and wanted to kill him. That's why we see here the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. Shaul was in the palace, and David was killing the enemies of Yahweh in the kingdom. So the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. Here, Daniel is the one who is receiving this prophecy hundreds of years before Mashiach. So he's talking about the people, Israel, of course, when it says, over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble. He's talking about the tribulation, the end times. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation. Such as never was since there was a nation. Right now, even this year, and I'm not saying anything about the time in which we could be, like I have said, we must wait if during this autumn, which already started, I think it was, is it today? Yeah. Regarding, well, meaning in the true calendar, of course, depending on where everybody is, that will be the weather, but this is the day in which autumn starts, and therefore, if the war starts in the next 3 months, then we could say that it's the second seal. And there are a lot of things that are suspicious regarding that, meaning a lot of people are talking about war right now. So we should keep our eyes open. But like I said, I was doing all the calculating with the next year, if it were to be next year, and there were a lot of interesting things regarding the connections that would be made when the two witnesses are captured and killed. And basically there will be an eclipse when they will be captured, eclipse of the moon, and then there will be an eclipse of the sun when the chosen few would have to go to the mountains on Sukkot, and that would be when the false Messiah will appear on earth. So if he appears on an eclipse, it will be pretty interesting, and a lot of people would buy the show. So I'm saying all of that because what we read here, and there shall be a time of trouble. Right now, we could not be even in that last week of Daniel yet. Like I said, it could start next April. It could not. Only, well, you already know. But if it started next year, that means we are not even in the last 7 years. We're not even in the last week. And look at the world right now. It's amazing how much trouble there is in the world. For the world. It's amazing how fearful everybody is, how broke a lot of people are, how depressed. I should add another because of the lockdown, a lot of people are depressed and wanted to commit suicide and all of those things. The floods in many parts of the world. Locusts, I'll mention that many times also, in certain parts eating all the food. The fires in a lot of parts also. It's amazing. Volcanoes erupting. The almost civil war, or the protests that are done in name of Black Lives Matter and other things now. A lot of things that are happening is amazing. I mean, it's amazing how there are still atheists when there's a scripture that foretold everything. So anyways, and there shall be a time of trouble, that is the tribulation. So it shows that Michael would stand up for the tribulation to protect the chosen few. That's why in Revelation we see that there is a Malach Michael with the seal of the living Elohim, the one who will seal the chosen few with the name of the Father and the Son, as seen in Revelation 14. So Michael is the one who appears as the good shepherd to seal each of the sheep of Yahweh, to save them during the harvest, as the wheat of Revelation 14, while the many are the grapes. So There shall be a time of trouble. We see Michael stands up as a witness in the tribulation, meaning the first 3.5 years. So he stays like uh, laying low in a way because he comes as a thief in the night, meaning Yahweh keeps him hidden. Pretty much also like Joseph was in jail before he became the second to the Pharaoh. Also, just like Moshe was in jail, and many other that I have mentioned, stories in which the person that would become the redeemer was hidden from everybody, and sometimes even in plain sight, like I said with David. So the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. In Hebrew, that is Hasar Hagadol. Hasar Hagadol, that is the one who will become a Melech Hagadol, meaning the great king. Yahushua came as the Kohen Hagadol. The last is the Melech Hagadol. So Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Right now, the last generation is the worst, even worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah was just an example, and as it is written in scriptures, this generation would be worst, and it is clear when you pretty much pay attention to many details, because obviously through political correctness and many other things they have hidden it. And I don't doubt that in a way they were like that in Sodom and Gomorrah, because the serpent is cunning, is uses the wisdom that he has to fool people. So obviously it's not gonna appear obviously evil, and that's how this world has become so evil, because it's so hypocritical, so fake, so full of that leaven of the Pharisees, which Yahushua said, take care not to have any of it in you. Yet the world decided to add a lot more than it had already when the Pharisees killed Mashiach. So they will obviously want to kill the two witnesses, since they will say that Mashiach was right. So at that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. Even in our time, we can see, even in one person's life, that person can testify of the fact that the world has been worse than ever, because that person can even read a lot of history, but his or her own experience will show that this world is done, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered. Blessed be the Most High. Your people, so he's talking about the Israelites once again, but the true Israelites, of course, which many are hidden within the nations, descendants of Ephraim. So, and I say Ephraim because those are the most in number, but obviously the all 12 tribes. So this is very important, and at that time your people shall be delivered. What people? The same people that the same revelation said or mentioned that Michael is watching over. So Michael, as the Malach of Philadelphia, will watch over the chosen few, and those who are sealed with the seal of the living Elohim will be delivered through the tribulation. They will be during the first 3.5 years, and then they will be harvested, not to be in the middle of the last 3.5 years, the last 7 plagues. So, and at that time your people shall be delivered. So that is beautiful, because it is a promise that we find in the Tanakh regarding what also Paul spoke of as a mystery. So Paul was explaining that mystery when talking of the harvest, the transformation, such a mystery that still Christian doctrines preach of it in a wrong way, talking of a rapture and saying certain things that are not correct with the scriptures. So here we see one confirmation of the chosen few being delivered, even while in the middle of the worst generation, just like Lot was in Sodom and Gomorrah, and Noah in his time. That's why Yahushua said, the coming of the Son of Man, when Michael would become a Son of Man, the coming of the Son of Man will be like the time of Lot and like the time of Noah. So everyone who is found written in the book, everyone who is found written in the book. What book? The book that has 7 seals. The one that Yahushua the Lamb has in his hand in Revelation, which he opens in Revelation 6. And the first thing that happens is that the rider of the white horse, spiritual war, is given a crown, authority, and he has a bow and goes conquering, and to conquer, like David conquered. That is the coming of the witness like Moshe, when Michael, the messenger of the Lamb, appears on the first seal. Then he opens the second seal, and there's third world war. Then the third seal, and there's world hunger, spiritual and physical. And then there is the fifth seal, when the martyrs who are in the paradise part of Sheol receive bodies, but have to wait for the chosen few to be gathered with them during the transformation. Then the sixth seal, when this world is shaken up, when the world changes from the 6,000 years to the Shabbat, from the 6,000 years of sin and a bunch of other things, evil, to the Shabbat, when the world is finally going to rest. So on that change, that is the sixth seal. Then comes the seventh seal, when the trumpets are blown, and the last trumpet is when the chosen few are delivered. So that's why the chosen few will be doing a lot of things happening on this earth, and will have to remain calm, persevere till the end, and then those who persevere will be saved. So, and at that time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Like I said, the martyrs will receive a body, and there is a first resurrection during the beginning of the 1,000 years for those who will be part of the 1,000 years, and then there will be a second resurrection for those souls that, the rest of the people that were left in Sheol, waiting for Judgment Day. Judgment will be at the end of the Shabbat, because in Shabbat there's no work, so there will be no judgment until the end of the Shabbat, until the end of the 1,000 years. Yahweh starts the judgment to see who will enter eternity, and the rest of people who were not seen as worthy, or because of the time in which they lived, their actions, and many other things, of being in the 1,000 years to experience this world, but perfect according to his will, like for everybody to see that he was right by following everything the right way, of course. Only some will be able to experience that, and then the rest of humanity will be resurrected for Judgment Day, to either go to the lake of fire or to the kingdom of Yahweh. So it says, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Some to shame and everlasting contempt. I find this very interesting, because hell is always, or at least I think that is my idea of what most people see it as, only as pain, torture, fire, burning, which in a way that is mentioned, of course, in scriptures. Eternal fire, which is different than this fire. That is something that must be taken in account when thinking how hell could be. Pain, but there are so many ways of feeling pain in this reality, imagine in a higher reality. um and well, also torture pretty much. But most people just think of it as in a physical way, and the evil will receive a body to have and experience physical pain. But something that the scripture mentions once, uh, well, like a lot, again and again, is like this right here: to shame and everlasting contempt. And also pretty much confusion is something that is mentioned a lot, and I find that very interesting. I always mention it pretty much. um and I think that it's very important to think about that. A lot of people don't think of shame until something happens to them and actually feel the shame, because the ego tells us that uh, there will be no shame for whatever that person is doing, that he or she can hide, and therefore things that like things that shame is below him or her, and therefore it won't happen. Yet when it happens, it feels awful, whatever it is, from a very little thing that can provoke somebody's shame. And just the fact that according to scriptures and even all the writings in Yahudim and Judaism, um, to make somebody feel ashamed is a great sin. It's very bad. Even there's a writing in Judaism that says that a person that makes somebody else ashamed won't receive uh, the kingdom to come, or the world to come. They won't be able to enter. So is how bad it is that there are so many laws regarding that, and how careful we must be not to make somebody feel ashamed. Like I always mention, also when we are in the street or whatever, if we see somebody fall, we shouldn't, like, obviously if there's something that we can do to help, of course we must do it. But if I mean it's something that you would feel ashamed of, like falling because you're not paying attention or whatever, and you just get up, that's it. You shouldn't look at the person straight, because he or she will feel very ashamed. So just like one wouldn't want anybody to see uh, you falling, then you should do with the others. Pretty much that's the point. So um, here it says to shame and everlasting contempt. Everlasting contempt. So it is eternal. Those people who rejected and felt contempt towards Yahweh and felt ashamed of talking about him, felt ashamed of saying even that they believe that there is a creator, who felt ashamed of those who believe in the Almighty and try to put them to shame and call them crazy and all of that. They will, once they realize that the scriptures are truth, that Yahweh is one, etc., etc., they will be eternally ashamed, because they made the worst error one anybody could make ever. So shame and everlasting contempt, that is hell. So then it says, verse 3, those who are wise shall shine. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament. When Abraham was given the covenant, he was told that his seed would become like the sand that is by the sea, and like the stars of the firmament. That it couldn't, like, nobody would be able to count the many people that would come from Abraham. When Yitzhak came, Yahweh told him that his seed would be like the stars of the firmament. And when Jacob came, he was told that his seed would be like the sand of the sea. So that shows how Yitzhak represents Yahushua and Jacob represents the second coming. That's why Yitzhak was taken to be sacrificed like Yahushua, and that's why Jacob had to fight with Elohim, had to fight with a malach, an angel, because he will be Michael fighting with Halel, the god of this world. So those who are wise shall shine. Yahushua came to bring wisdom. So those who, through the preaching of the Good Shepherd, Michael, receive the doctrine of Yahushua as the light, those will shine. When they receive from the Ruach HaKodesh the wisdom, they will shine because they will become the light of this world. The last, Michael, as Malachi 4:2 says, is the son of righteousness. The son. So he comes as the son, and the chosen few as his children are all stars. And the moon is the congregation, the spirit pretty much of the Ruach HaKodesh, which is within the chosen few. So those who listen to the voice, which is the Son of Righteousness, will receive the light, which is Yahushua HaMashiach, and therefore will begin to shine like stars of the firmament. And those are the chosen few, the 144,000, which I said are going to be able to access the heavens because they will be like the firmament. And that's why in Revelation 15 we see that the chosen few are taken to the firmament. They are above the firmament and are singing the song of the Lamb and Moshe, because finally the first and last become one. So they sing the song of that Mashiach. So those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. And those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. So the blessing that Yahweh gives to somebody who helps another person to live to follow Yahweh, to find righteousness, to seek Yahweh's mercy, to repent, etc., etc., to find a better life in Yahweh through His Spirit, His commandments, and obviously Yahushua HaMashiach, the truth. That person will receive a huge blessing, and pretty much Yahweh is saying that will become one of the chosen, because it's talking like that they will become like the stars forever and ever. Now, the fact that they will live forever and ever, that is given to the many, and within the sheepfold of the many, obviously they always try to get other people to know the Almighty or Messiah, at least as they know it. So that is what was said to Daniel as a prophecy regarding the coming of Michael during the tribulation to save the chosen few, and then some would resurrect to be thrown in shame and everlasting contempt, and some for everlasting life like the stars of the firmament. So then I continue with verse 4. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So you, Daniel, shut up the words. This is interesting because in the book of Revelation we see something very similar. Just like I always say, Revelation and Daniel are pretty much a reflection, one or the other of the other, or like I said, also the book of Daniel is pretty much the book of Revelation of the Old Testament, of the Tanakh. So there are many connections, and this also happens in the book of Revelation. However, in the book of Revelation, Yahweh tells Yahuhanan not to seal the words, not to close the information within that revelation. And it didn't mean to close the book and hide it. It had to do with the understanding of it. Because people, when it comes to this book, like he said here, but you, Daniel, shut up the words. Unlike it happened with Yahuhanan. And then we see the reason why. And seal the book until the time of the end. it would be until the time of the end when the book would be understood, because until now it would be sealed. So people back in the day would read Daniel and wouldn't understand it. That's why the Jewish people read it and didn't understand the calculation given in Daniel 9 to see that Yahushua was Messiah and that he would be killed. They didn't understand that chapter until afterwards. And even afterwards, they decided to put a curse on anybody who calculates Daniel 9. So there was a seal put on the book, spiritually speaking, so that when anybody would read Daniel, they wouldn't understand it. Just like a person that receives a book and doesn't know how to read. Or, like it says in Isaiah also, when somebody's given a book which is closed and the person says, I don't have the key to open it. So that's also a key to open a book, is pretty much the symbolism. When you understand the symbols used in a parable or something like that, then you are able to decipher the knowledge given in those words. When you don't understand the symbolism, then it's pretty much animals and stuff like that what you see in the book. So it is like crazy talk. But when you receive the symbolism are pretty much the keys to be able to decipher what is said. So that's why, and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. That is another sign that we are in the end times, because the knowledge has increased amazingly in the past years through technology, and the fact that all information is now is being hidden through the algorithms and control that they have also of the internet. But all information is in the internet for those who are able to access it somehow, and that is a lot of knowledge. They say all the knowledge of humankind is in the internet. I don't believe all the way there, but pretty much. So that is a sign that we are in the end times. Mainly, the knowledge through history would help us understand what is written in Daniel. So just history would give us keys to understand Daniel. So that's why it would be understood until the end. Because a prophecy is very well understood once it happens. The problem is be able to decipher when it's being fulfilled really what Yahweh said, not what somebody's trying to fulfill, like sometimes it happens in the world. So it says, many shall run to and fro. That's also a prophecy, and that's also for this time. It shows how people would go from, for instance, through the use of planes, could go in a matter of hours on a distance that back in the day would take weeks. So the fact that some people travel, and well, right now because of the coronavirus is not the same everywhere, but some places still going on, but it is what it is. It is possible. The fact that somebody, because of work or whatever, can travel to one state in the United States and then go to a different country and then to another country in a week, that is going to and fro, running to and fro, here and there, like nothing, and not going anywhere really, because they wouldn't be going towards Yahweh through His way, Yahushua HaMashiach. They would be going their own way on their own private planes to and fro, away from Yahweh, trying to make some money and all of that that goes on nowadays. But that run to and fro could not be said back in the day like it can be said nowadays. So even that is a prophecy that is seen nowadays because of the way how people travel. So knowledge shall increase, many shall run to and fro. Like I was saying, Yahuhanan was told that his book shouldn't be sealed, that it was supposed to be open. Because once Yahushua came and fulfilled what he did, then the end times officially started. The end times started 2,000 years ago. However, obviously, when we talk about the end times, we are more focused on the plagues of the book of Revelations. When we talk about the end times, or at least when I talk about the end times, I'm mainly speaking about the last 7 years, the week of Daniel. But the end times started once Yahushua manifested. Basically, the starting times, the beginnings, were from Genesis till Malachi. Well, when it comes to most Bibles, meaning from Adam to John the Baptist. That was the beginning of things. Yahushua came to start the end of things, but now the last appears to end the end and begin again a new reality. So I hope that's clear. That's why Yahuhanan was told not to seal the words. Daniel was given this prophecy hundreds of years before Mashiach, so he had to seal the words. And from Mashiach till our time, knowledge has increased, and people run to and fro more than ever. So it is clear, or it should be clear for everybody, that there is an end to this reality, and we are living in it. So, verse 5. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others. This is amazing because it confirms pretty much everything, well, a lot of the things that I say, regarding how Mashiach was the one speaking to Daniel. Like he said a couple chapters back, he said, I tell you what is written in the scripture of truth, which is in heaven. Only one helps me in the heavens, and that is Michael. So in the heavens, pretty much everybody felt, like we saw also, the congregation in Isaiah, if I'm not mistaken, regarding how Yahweh got angry with all the angels, and all the host of heaven would be thrown away, destroyed in the end times. So that's why Michael becomes pretty much, through Yahushua, I want to make that clear, a way for the Malachim who actually did not rebel or want to find a way to Yahweh to do so, as when Noah made an ark. The son of man, like Michael, the son of man, like Noah, making an ark through Yahushua, who died on a wooden beam, or a cross made of wood, meaning like the wood that was used for the ark. So Yahushua's sacrifice is the wood that we use to make an ark for the humans and for the Malachim, who are the ones that gave the image to the animals. Like I said, Yahweh gave the image to humans, and the angels were the ones from whom the image was taken for the animals. So that's why in the ark there were humans and animals, because at the end times Yahweh, through first and last, would unite heaven and earth, and therefore make a way for both Malachim and humans. And that way is Yahushua, as testified through the last, the Good Shepherd. Hope that is clear. And that is another interpretation of John 10, when Yahushua speaks of how there would be two sheepfolds who would become one. And that has to do with Israel of the north and the Yahudim from the south, meaning the kingdom of the north and the kingdom of the south. Israel and Yahudim, two sheepfolds who become one. Also had to do with the Israelites and the Gentiles who would become one in Yahushua, but also has to do with the humans and the Malachim, like I already explained. So it is interesting that Yahushua HaMashiach is prophesying to Daniel that Michael would stand up at the end. And then in Yahuhanan, in the book of Revelation given to Yahuhanan, we see that Michael came down to prophesy regarding the revelation of Yahushua. So it is amazing how it works, what happened, and then what Michael did in the time when Yahushua came as a human, and now what Yahushua at the right hand of the Father would do for Michael when he comes as a human. Hope that's understood. So, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So here is Mashiach speaking to Daniel about the manifestation during the first 3.5 years, the tribulation of Michael, the only one who stands in his favor, in Yahushua's favor, the truth in heaven, as a leader. That doesn't mean that only that Malach, he could have others like being he himself the leader of the army. So Then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others. So Mashiach is speaking, and all of a sudden the two witnesses appear. This is like the transfiguration, when the Messiah took three of his disciples on Sukkot. They were on the mountain, and all of a sudden he transfigured, most likely like Daniel was seeing him in that moment, and two appeared next to him, Moshe and Eliyahu, the two witnesses, but in this case two malachim, to represent the two witnesses, like the two malachim that came in the time of Sodom and Gomorrah. So then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on this riverbank and the other on that riverbank, one on each side of the one who was in the middle, like the two olive trees that are on each side of the sovereign of the earth, according to Zechariah 4, which then is mentioned in Revelation 11 regarding the two witnesses as the two olive trees, the two anointed. So that can be interpreted as Yahweh with first and last on each riverbank, as Zechariah 4 can also be interpreted, or it can be interpreted as Mashiach with Moshe and Eliyahu on each riverbank, on each side, as the two witnesses. So, and one said to the men clothed in linen, like the one who will get married, meaning Mashiach in Revelation 19, clothed in linen. So, and one of the two said to the men clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river? And listen to that, who was above the waters of the river. So he was standing on the water, like Yahushua showed us that he can do. So just like he walked on water, now we see that he was standing on the water. That's pretty much to show that is Mashiach that stands over the laws of this reality, because he created it. He's the one clothed in linen because he's the one who will marry the congregation. So, and one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? This is interesting because one of the two speaks like the voice of Yahweh. And the question, let me see, verse 5. It says, and I saw, I, Daniel, and behold, two others, Shenaim Acharim. Acharim can also be taken as those who come at the end. So, confirming regarding the two witnesses. Then it said, standing, one, oh well, I already read that, but I guess it was verse 6. Yeah, it was verse 6. So, and one said to the man dressed in fine linen, who was over the waters, said, until when? Alright. I just wanted to see the way in which he asked the question. In the question, when it says until when will be the end of these things, or of this marvelous revelation, but when it says until when will be the end, is ad matai ketz, which could be also translated or interpreted as aid, which is witness. Matai could be connected with mut, which is dead body, or maved, which comes from maved, which is death. So until the witness dies, then the end, in those words in which he is asking. And like I said, the one who is asking would be as the voice. And I wanted to see if in the question was the word ma. That's how it started, since that is the representation of the last, but that's not the case in this question. So, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? When will be the end, is what literally says, of these wonders. But like I said, in the same question, like it happens with the name Mikael, we find the answer. When will be the end? When the witness dies. So how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Then, and it's interesting that we can see that in Hebrew, and the whole chapter started talking about Mikael standing up to testify. So, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, like the two witnesses, and obviously to give honor and praise to Yahweh and receive, well, the answer, and swore by him who lives forever. So that is Mashiach swearing in the name of Yahweh, basically being Yahushua the Word. So that's why Yahweh is revealing to him that which the Malach asked. So that's how the last asks in order to receive answers, and then he gives those answers to the congregation. Yahushua being the Word who receives the wisdom directly. So we see here, and swore by him who lives forever that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. So times, that's 3, because one time times makes reference to one more and half a time, that would be half a year, so that is 3.5 years. 3.5 years. Like I said, the two witnesses appear the first 3.5 years, and then there is, after they die, 3.5 years to finish the 7 years. So that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. And when the power of the set apart people has been completely scattered, all these things shall be finished. All these things shall be finished. Also, some translations say shattered. Let me see in Hebrew. See here, like I said, I don't see the word for breaking as some translated, but it could be translated, like I said, as scattered, as also divided among the chosen few, meaning the power that Yahweh will give to his kings will be given through his Ruach HaKodesh. Once the last, Mikael, seals each of the chosen few, through that name of the Father and the Son, they will receive the Spirit, as it is written in John 17:26. Through the name of Yahushua, we receive the Spirit. That Spirit gives us wisdom. The Ruach obviously gives us all the fruits, and according to the gifts of Yahweh for each person that we see in the New Covenant. So the Spirit comes to us when we confess the names. Like I said, the witness, like Moshe, seals the chosen few with the names. Those names give the Spirit. And by giving the 144,000 each the name, and therefore a portion of the Spirit, a portion of the ministry, then the power would be divided, if we could use that word, among the body of Mashiach, which has many members. Well, in this case, 144,000, which are the chosen few, and then many are the ones who represent the blood, which fills the body, as those who will serve in the temple, as we see in Revelation 7. So, the answer was that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time, and when the power of the set apart people has been completely scattered, all these things shall be finished. So, like I said, the two witnesses will give the true doctrine to the chosen few, and through it, the power of the set apart people will be among them, the chosen few. Now, if we take the other interpretation, the other translation, That would be when Israel will be destroyed by the abomination of desolation, and they will go to kill the many. So when ultimately the few power as a nation that Israel has in this world, true Israel, I mean, the few power that it has will be finally taken away when the New World Order starts, and that would be that moment. So if you want to take it in the negative sense, it means when the two witnesses are killed and the power is taken from the people and they go to kill the many. But in the sense that the power of the set apart people is the Ruach HaKodesh, and can nobody destroy that, then we can take it as the power being separated among the chosen few who will use it to establish the kingdom of Yahweh on this earth. So, all these things shall be finished. So the chosen few had to be gathered. Once they all sealed, everything will come to an end, because that's what is needed for everything to be done with. So then it says, although I heard, I did not understand. Then I said, my sovereign, what shall be the end of these things? So Daniel had to ask again because he did not understand the answer that was given to the Malach by the side. So he says, and I heard and I did not understand. So I said, Adoni, so my sovereign. Now we see this question asked in a different way. I mean, it's the same question but a bit different. And here it is how I was expecting it in the previous chapter. Now I'm having to check the previous chapter. Where it says, Ma acharit ale. Ma acharit ale. So ma is a representation of the last, just like me is a representation of the first. Me means who, ma means what. So what shall be the end of these things? He said, what will be the end of it? Or those things, actually. What will be the end of those things that were said? And he didn't use the word end, but he used the word acharit, as in the last thing of it. So then we see, and he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. So it's pretty much telling Daniel, don't even worry about it, because it is for the end times. It is sealed right now. That's why you're not getting it that easily. Even though he's going to be explaining a little bit more. And since he said what will be the last of these things, as we know, the last 7 years are 3.5 and 3.5. So we see that it says here, and he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified. Many shall be purified, made white and refined, like the many who will die and resurrect in white robes, being refined and purified through having died. So many shall be purified, made white and refined. But the wicked shall do wickedly. But the wicked shall do wickedly. Which means then also that in the end times, many will begin to find a pure life in Yahweh, while the wicked will become more and more wicked, as we are seeing, of course. So the wicked shall do wickedly. And none of the wicked shall understand. That is something that we must understand, that they won't. Because many times there are certain people, and I'm not saying that pretty much, because some people might think what I'm saying like, oh, so my mom is a wicked person because she's not understanding. Not necessarily. Although in this reality, and I don't know everybody that will watch this video, there are many things that are possible. Anything is possible. So we must account for everything. We must not just jump to the most negative. When I say this, I'm talking about real wicked people. Sometimes some very wicked people are hidden in certain families, in certain clubs, in certain places. and they will not understand no matter how you explain it to them. So we need to understand, some people are not understanding because of their sin, because they're not paying attention, because at the moment they're not interested. So we must pray for them so they are able to get to that and find interest for the word and a bunch of other things, so that they get to understand, and Yahweh will make them understand and get pure, like we see there, that they shall be purified. But when it comes to certain people, they just won't get it no matter how simple you make it for them. So we need to understand that the wicked, it says, and none of the wicked shall understand. None of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. The wise shall understand. So we need to keep that in mind always when we speak with whoever on the street or wherever we may be. If we are preaching to somebody, there are some times when no matter how you put it to them, they won't understand it. And it may be because they are wicked. And that's it. Pretty much wickedness covers the eyes and the ears for people not to understand. So depending on how wicked that person is, that's how hard it becomes for that person to understand, because at the end we have all sinned. So the more we repent and the more we clean our deeds, the more we will understand, pretty much. So there is obviously a relation, but I just want to make sure that you don't take it as anybody who doesn't understand is wicked, because some people are just not paying attention when you're talking to them, to say the least. So, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, so we find this once again because it appears several times in the book of Daniel, and it has been fulfilled as a shadow a couple times in history, yet it represents when the two witnesses are killed, and no longer Yahweh will demand or ask or expect any sacrifice from humans like it was prophesied that it had to happen. So the daily sacrifice, which, let me see, in Hebrew it says, and from that time Hatamid says Husar Hatamid will be taken away. So the continuous sacrifice, that will be stopped. The fact that Yahweh was allowing people dying because of the accusation of Satan and all of that will be taken away when the two witnesses are finally killed. That is pretty much, even though it's about dying, the positive sense of this verse, because in the physical or the earthly way that this will be fulfilled, or they are trying to fulfill it, is by building a physical temple in Jerusalem, starting the sacrifices that they would do daily in the morning and the afternoon in the physical temple, and then when the two witnesses are killed, the false Messiah will appear on earth and will take over that temple and will decide not to make any more sacrifices because he's already on earth. So that is when the sacrifice will be taken away, in the middle of the week. When 3.5 years go by, times and half a time, then the sacrifice is taken away. It says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away. So here it's talking exactly from the time that is taken away. So it means when the two witnesses are killed, pretty much. Two witnesses are killed. Well, or it could be said when the false Messiah appears on earth, which will be in a matter of a week, pretty much. So the false Messiah will appear on earth in the middle of the week. 3.5 years. In the middle, the false Messiah will appear and will stop the sacrifices, the physical sacrifice. So when from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, that means when the false Messiah appears on earth. So we see the connection in time, yet there is a difference or separation, which is to show what I was saying, that when the two witnesses are killed, then the false Messiah will appear. That's why the son of perdition cannot appear until the one who is in the middle is taken away, or while he's not taken away, which is while the witness is not killed, then the son of perdition cannot appear. That is why we see in Daniel that Michael is the one who stands in heaven, pretty much in the middle, protecting, making the son of perdition not manifest on earth yet, pretty much. So when he's taken away, meaning when he is killed, then he can appear on earth, the son of perdition. So that is why the daily sacrifice is taken away, and then the abomination of desolation is set up. In the physical sense, I already explained it, and you can hear it everywhere when it comes to Christian eschatology. But I repeat, once the two witnesses are killed, till that moment, most of the feast will be fulfilled already. But those feasts that have to do with sacrifice definitely will have been fulfilled, since Yahushua fulfilled Pesach, Matzot, first fruit, and Shavuot. Now the two witnesses fulfill Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur, and that's it. So the daily sacrifice, which is not even called daily, but the sacrifice that Yahweh decided to make on this earth, they would be fulfilled. Not just the two witnesses and Mashiach, but also the martyrs that have died and, like I said, received body during the fifth trumpet. So those sacrifices will come to an end, and then when the two witnesses are no longer on this earth, blocking the manifestation of the son of perdition, when they are killed, the son of perdition will appear, and that son of perdition is the false Messiah, called the abomination of desolation. Scripture talks of idols as abominations, and talks of destruction as desolation. So the abomination of desolation is an idol that is able to destroy. We see in the book of Revelation that the first beast, the world leader, gets together with the second beast, the false prophet, and they make an image that is an idol. And Yahweh allows to give breath to the image that is a person. So the second beast will give the breath of Satan to that human body that they will make, being that an image, because when Yahweh made us, he made us in image and likeness. So the image will be a body, and the likeness will be the breath that Yahweh will allow the beast to give to this body, which is the image. So the image of the beast will be a human body that will receive the spirit of Satan, the abomination of desolation, an image that will be able to destroy. That's why Revelation says that that image will kill those who do not worship him. So those who do not worship the image will be killed by it and his army, because he will claim to be God on earth, the Christ, and he will demand worship. There's a bug, hopefully it will go. So right when I said that, it came to attack. So when the two witnesses are killed, the body that the beast and the false prophet made will be ready for Satan to enter it as the spirit, and Azazel as the soul, the body being the one in which the inclination to evil will be, therefore Samael. So that's how the false Messiah is 666, 3 Satans in one, because he will be through the body. Samael will be acting up as the inclination to evil. The spirit that will give it life will be Satan, the spirit of the sons of disobedience, the spirit which is the God of this world, which will fall in Revelation 12. And then the Apollyon, who comes from the bottomless pit, will come as the soul of that body, and that will be Azazel. And I know that may be new to some, but we see it in scriptures in many ways, how that is pretty much the end of it. Just like Yahweh will be one through first and last, who become one. Yahushua is already one with the Father. When he becomes one with the last, that would be 3 in 1. And that is not Trinity, but that's how you could see it. That's where they took the Trinity to make their false religions. Yahweh as first and last, becoming one. That's why Echad in Hebrew has 3 letters. One word, 3 letters. Yahweh manifesting twice. So, and from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, the 2 witnesses are killed, and the abomination of desolation is set up, the idol who will kill people who do not worship him is set up in the world as the God of this world. And when he appears, when there is a temple, he will say, I'm here, so stop it. And then it says, there shall be 1,290 days. 1,290 days. That's interesting, because when he talks about 3.5 years in Revelation regarding the congregation and the teaching of the 2 witnesses, it speaks of 1,260 days. So here we see 30 extra days. 1,290 days for the abomination of desolation. Why is that? Because we see in Hosea 5:7 that the abomination of desolation will be given 30 days to kill the many. So he will receive the first 30 days to kill those who do not worship him and do not want to put the mark of the beast in them. After those 30 days, he will finish with the last week of Daniel, 1,260. So 1,260 plus 30, 1,290. That's why from the time that the sacrifice is taken away until the end of the abomination of desolation, 1,290 days. Hope that's clear. And it says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So he's pretty much saying that the abomination of desolation will be for 1,290 days. 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. So then he adds 45 days. And there are several ways in which I see this happening. In a way, I see it connected with Purim as the last fulfillment of Purim, because of the way it would extend 45 days extra plus the 30. That's pretty much 75 days extra from the exact 7 years. So the end times is pretty much 7 years of action and 75 days added to it for different reasons, for different moments. And one of those is this space of 45 days, which seems to be let's see, in Daniel, I already said this in Daniel 7, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, in Daniel 7 it says in verse 11, I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking, the leader, the world leader, the beast, the leader of the new world order. I watched till the beast was slain, his government, the 5th last plague, meaning pretty much the end of the last 7 years. So we almost entering that period of 45 days that I mentioned. I watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. And as for the rest of the beasts, meaning the rest of the nations, those who did not take part pretty much in the New World Order as main participants, or were just controlled to it and not really agreeing with, and not the whole nation, but certain people from those nations who actually rejected the mark of the beast and the system, they will remain in certain parts of the world. And after the war of Armageddon, the war of Revelation 19, which is at the end of the last 7 years, then It's possible through all the nuclear power that they will try to use to kill the chosen few coming to destroy them with Mashiach in Revelation 19. It is possible because of all that destruction that will happen in Armageddon, that Yahweh says that those who are around the earth and are able to survive for 45 days extra after the abomination of desolation is destroyed, meaning after the false Messiah is taken out of this world, those who are able to even wait for 45 days after the 1290, those will be happy and blessed because they will be able to remain on earth, in a perfect governed earth for 1,000 years and multiply and become those who will fill the nations once again. However, at the end of the 1,000 years, Satan will be allowed to go and deceive them, and some of them will be deceived and rebelled and destroyed. But that's at the end of the 1,000 years. But we see here in Daniel 7:12, as for the rest of the beasts, the rest of the nations, they had their dominion taken away, because it's going to be given to the Son of Man. Yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. For a season and a time. So they were prolonged. As in, like I said, for the millennium, those who actually survive. Obviously, if we were to be direct and see season and time would be, like I said, 1 year, and a season would be 3 months. So that would be for a year and 3 months. So, just a second. Then, going back to Daniel 12, it said, "Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days." So 45 days after the 1,290 days, which is the time of the abomination of desolation. So whoever will be within the nations after the abomination of desolation is taken away of this world will have to wait 45 days extra, and then he will be happy because the world will enter a different atmosphere. But you go your way till the end, for you shall rest, and will arise to your inheritance at the end of days. So Yahweh promised them resurrection and honor, and being part of the kingdom. But you go your way till the end, for you shall rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of days. Confirming that there is resurrection, yet there were a sect in the time of Yahushua who did not believe in the resurrection of the dead. So now I'm going to give a couple minutes for you guys to write any questions you want. We'll see the questions and then we'll close the study. If Michael means who is like Elohim, what does Hillel mean? Hillel means a boastful luminary, meaning a light who happened to think too much of itself and therefore ended up fooling itself and falling. Pretty much is the whole meaning of, or the reason why that name was given to that Malak, because he was given a light and that made him turn, which is completely foolish to receive a gift and use that gift to hurt that who gave it to you, pretty much, or try at least. Verse 7, like the seventh day, is powerful. Then I heard the men clothed who. That's right. And it's interesting that the number 7 is like the 7 lights in a menorah, which has 3 on one side and 3 on the other side, and 1 in the middle, which is the Shemesh, which would have to be divided in 2, like first and last, like the light and the Son of Righteousness, and that would make 3.5 and 3.5. So on the verse 7, he speaks of the 3.5 years, which I find interesting, and how the chosen few will be given the Ruach, those who are around the Malach. Then Omar, what sacrifice does the many few represent? I'm not sure if I understand the question, but the you mean the fact that the many die? That is the sacrifice of the red heifer, and the fact that the chosen few do not have to die is represented by the offering of the wheat. They would bring processed wheat, fine flour to the temple. That meant that no animal had to die, so that represents the chosen few. So the many and the few, red heifer, and the wheat or fine flour. In a spiritual sense, what is the altar? What is the altar of the last? That would be Mashiach, Yahushua. He prays to Yahweh in the name of Yahushua, so he goes to Yahushua pretty much. So that's what he tells the chosen few to do also. And I'm not sure if you're asking that regard because of what we read in Yeshayahu of the altar to which Chizkiyahu made everybody come to worship. So yeah, that would be to worship Yahweh through Yahushua, through the merit of Yahushua, come before Yahweh in order to receive the answer or forgiveness, etc. Do you believe that USA will fall as the world power and therefore it seems that Europe will be the center of the fulfillment of the prophecy? Well, it's a good question because there are certain things that are very interesting regarding Europe. For instance, the name itself is another name for the great whore. It's another name for the spirit called the great harlot of Babylon. Europe is a name for it. And the image of Europe and the story of Europe has to do with her, a female, riding a bull, a beast. So that is pretty much the great whore. So there is a lot of what scripture says regarding the great whore and therefore the beast regarding having to do with Europe. So that's why a lot of people see it that way and will say definitely yes. I do believe that USA is falling, and I mean the way the politicians and the people that are supposed to be the smart ones are acting is amazing, because if they are the smart ones, then it's pretty much doomed. So yeah, I do believe that USA is falling, but the point at the end will be to focus everything on Jerusalem. The New World Order will try to rule from Jerusalem, but that will be until pretty much Jerusalem will be the center once the two witnesses are killed. So for the chosen few, they won't actually get to see the kingdom being ruled from Jerusalem. They will most likely see everything that will transpire until that moment. So that will include eventually the United States falling, and Europe getting some importance, or I guess some of the names being mentioned in that time a lot, mainly because of Europe, its name and the story of it and everything represents. Will be the center of the fulfillment of the prophecy. Yeah, and regarding the fulfillment of the prophecy, not sure which prophecy you're talking about. Then it says, is Daniel one of the 24 elders sitting around the throne in Revelation? Most likely he is, yeah. So pretty much when he was told that he would be raised up in the end to get his inheritance, pretty much was to be part of those 24. It's very, very likely that he's one of the 24 because Yahushua called him a prophet. And Daniel obviously prophesied of Mashiach, like I mentioned over and over again. And according to one of the Gnostic, well, the Gospel of Thomas, there were 24 prophets who directly spoke of Mashiach. So they would be the 24 elders because they came before Mashiach, so they would be old. So, well, yeah, I guess those were all the questions. So I'm gonna finish the study here. Tomorrow it is, well, in our calendar will be Yom Teruah, so I will be doing hopefully I'll be able to go to the radio to do this programa for those who speak Spanish. And yeah, you can make all the questions you want regarding the day that we'll be celebrating tomorrow. And I don't know if you guys want me to blow the shofar, since Omar said that and then Jay said that, but I haven't blown the shofar today. Well, not online. Then here's a question from chapter 10. But is there a lot of difference between the root word semakat in Isaiah 63:5 and made chasek in Daniel 10:21? You're asking if there's a lot of difference between the root of each of those words. Hopefully that is. Let me go check. Isaiah 63:5. Isaiah 63:5. Semach, to uphold, and then the other one was from chapter 10, or did you mean verse 10? I'm guessing you said Daniel 12:10. I'm gonna check that. Yeah, I'm not sure what you said. Daniel chapter 10:21. Okay, thank you. 10:21. All right. Chasag. Okay. Yeah, chasag has to do with strength, as in upholds, as in strengthens, makes sure that it gets fulfilled, that it happens, or that it doesn't happen. In this case, that the prince wouldn't take over yet, while Mashiach appeared before Daniel to tell him everything that was going to happen. Chazak has to do with strength, is the root of Chizkiyahu. And Samak, yeah, it's completely a different root. Samak, it has to do with support, lean, or sustain. So both with being supported and supporting, depending on how you use the verb. But it's more seen as to place or to lay, because in Hebrew also those words that are with samech and shin can be, the shin and the samech can be interchanged, and when you do that with this word, you can see the root as there. So meaning that samach has to do mainly with putting something somewhere, leaning or being supported by something, or supporting something, therefore putting something on your hand, for instance. So the other one has to do with strength, doing something, being strong, and the other one has to do with supporting or holding.